We're going to replace our front mounted catalytic converter located under your hood on the front side of your engine. When I go ahead and open up your hood, we're going to start by removing our upper cover here. I'm going to go ahead and use our Phillips head screwdriver, pop out that center, and then pop out the plastic clip. We're missing a couple here, and if it doesn't have the Phillips head screw, you can usually press in on the center. You can hear that pop in. Use your trim tool and go ahead and pop that button out. Repeat that process through the rest of these clips. Once you have all those clips out, you'll just want to go ahead and lift up on this cover and set it aside. Using a 10mm socket, we're going to remove the two bolts right here holding our intake tube. Now on the side of our air intake right here, there's going to be a couple vacuum ports or vacuum hoses. Just pop those out of the clips. And on the side right here, there's going to be two plastic retainers. On the bottom side, there's going to be two little pinch tabs on there. I'm going to go ahead and use our needle nose pliers and undo those clips. Just going to pinch on that and push that up and out. And do the same for the other one underneath here. And go ahead and remove this piece, set it aside. I'm going to go ahead and remove our radiator support here. There's a series of 10mm bolts we're going to go ahead and remove. Now we're removing our hood latch as well. Just going to loosen that and get in the back here. This is going to unbolt the center beam from the radiator support. On the ends, we have a couple bolts. We want to go ahead and unbolt our horns from the support as well. So let's go ahead and get those bolts out. Use our 12mm gear wrench to go ahead and loosen and remove these. Just let the horns droop on down there. They're not going to go anywhere. If you want to, you can disconnect the electrical connectors from them and put them on your bench. And right here on the top, there's a plastic clip holding our hood release cable to the bottom side. So we're just going to use our needle nose pliers. Gently pinch that and drop that down in. Go ahead and lift up on our support. With your hood open, you want to go ahead and identify the negative side of that battery. That's this one right here. Let's go ahead and use our 10mm socket. We're going to go ahead and loosen and disconnect the ground side. Slide that terminal off and set that aside. Using your plastic trim tool remover, go ahead and remove this button right here. Pop out the center, remove that clip. Remove these two screws, this one here. And this one here. Across the front, we're going to remove our 10mm screws. Good. Remove your shield, set that aside. Now with the splash shield removed, we're going to go ahead and access our drain plug right here on the lower part of our radiator. This little knob right here, you want to turn it counterclockwise. And as this comes out, we should start to get some coolant out of here. Let this drain into your catch can or your bucket. Once this is drained out, we'll go ahead and proceed back to the top of the engine, working up there. Now that our coolant is drained out, we can go ahead and tighten up the drain plug here. Once that bottoms out, just give it a little bit more, make sure that's snug. On the top here, I want to go ahead and remove our expansion tank. There's two 10mm bolts, one right here and one right on the other side. Let's go ahead and loosen and remove those. Once we have those removed, you now want to go ahead and disconnect the expansion tank hose to the neck on the radiator. You can simply grab that, give it a couple twists, and slide that off. Now if yours doesn't want to come off, you can use a pair of pliers, grab that hose, give it a couple twists, and then pop that thing right off. Once that's off, take the tank, remove it, and set it aside. With the expansion tank gone, I'm just going to go ahead and reinstall the bolts. That way there, I know where they're at. Want to go ahead and disconnect your upper radiator hose using a pair of pliers. Go ahead and pinch this clamp, open that up, and just go ahead and slide that down the radiator hose. We're going to try and go ahead and spin this off the radiator. There might be a little bit of residual coolant that might come out of this here. But seeing how we already drained it, this shouldn't be much. Twist off the hose. And we're just going to fold this back and out of the way. We have the lower portion to our air intake tube. Just going to grab this little plastic piece here, twist that, pop it out, set that aside. Now along our cooling fans here, we're going to have harnesses with plastic clips and tabs and buttons. Let's go ahead, and you're going to use a couple tools. You can use your trim tool. Pop a couple of these off. Go ahead and grab connectors here. Push on that tab. I'm going to go ahead and disconnect this here. Pop that aside. Now some of these clips, you're going to use a pair of needle nose pliers. Just going to get behind it, pinch the little tabs, and go ahead and work that off. Go ahead and just tuck this aside like that. And we're going to continue across, disconnecting any harnesses and connectors. Along the passenger side, you have your lower radiator hose. It's actually held into the cooling fan by a plastic clip. I'm just going to go ahead and grab that hose and just kind of flex that out. And just disconnect that from the cooling fan. Then you can see once that's out, you can just put that hose to the side, like so. Across the top of your cooling fans is going to be these plastic clips here holding our fans to our radiator. You're going to pinch these tabs in, and you want to go ahead and push out on the fans. We're going to use our trim tool and apply a little bit of pressure here. I'm just using pliers here, a little bit stronger to go ahead and flex that in. And I'm using my plastic trim tool here to go ahead and work that. we go. Go ahead and get that last clip. Once that pops out, we're going to try and go ahead and lift up on our radiator. Now, as you're doing this, you want to go ahead and pay attention to any of the harnesses, any connectors that might be in the way, and slowly lift this up and out. Go ahead and set that aside. Now I want to go ahead and disconnect our O2 sensor here. So I'm going to go ahead and pop our upper radiator hose up and out of the way. Follow this gray connector back, and it is located right back here. Now I'm using a pocket screwdriver. I'm going in underneath the front here because the push tab on the back side is really, really hard. So if you can get in the front, you can pry up on this little tab. Using a pair of long pliers here, and I'm just going to grab the connector and slide that out. At this point here, go ahead and fold up that hose again. Tuck that up. I'm going to go ahead and use our 7/8 O2 sensor socket here. I want to go ahead and loosen and remove this O2 sensor. Now our O2 sensor is stuck in our catalytic converter, so we're going to use a heat inductor unit and try and heat this up. Now, with the O2 sensor loose, we can go ahead and unthread that. As we're undoing this, I'm going to go ahead and spin that wire with it. You don't want that to bind up. Unthread that unit and go ahead and set that aside. Now on our heat shield here, we're going to go ahead and remove the 10mm bolts that are holding this on. It's one here, there's one over here. Let's go ahead and start working those out. I'm just going to go around breaking these loose for now. And we'll go ahead and zip those out. Now on the upper portion here of our exhaust manifold, there's going to be 6 nuts with studs. There's 1, 2, 3, and there's 3 across the bottom underneath the manifold here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go around, I'm just trying to loosen each one. I want to break them free using a 12mm socket with our ratchet. And just gently get those loose. Now it's okay if the stud comes out with it. We just want to get these free. Now we're just using a basic ratchet here, and they're coming out nice. On the bottom, we're going to have to use an extension. All right, we have all 6 loose. Next thing we want to do is go to the bottom of our cat. There's going to be 2 bolts down below securing this to our lower downpipe flange. Let's go ahead and work on those. On the bottom side of our catalytic converter, we're going to use a 14 millimeter box wrench. I'm going to go on the nut side right here. We're going to go ahead and go underneath the vehicle. We want to go ahead and loosen the bolt on the other side here. We did spray this down with some rust penetrant. Once we get this loose and removed, we're going to go ahead and switch over to the other side. Use our 14 millimeter. Get some extensions. Let's go ahead and loosen and remove this bolt. Get that bolt out. Let's get move over to the other side. Now the other side, we end up going to a regular wrench. On that side there, the box wrench would not fit between the heat shield on the lower portion of the cat and the stud. Let's go ahead and loosen and remove the 3 lower nuts on our cat here. And we'll go ahead and get the top ones now. There's a bracket right here that goes from the catalytic converter flange to the engine block. It's going to be easier just to undo the nut off the stud here. And use our 14 millimeter socket and extension with our ratchet. Good to break that free. Let's go ahead and use our 14 millimeter and remove this bolt right here. Get this bolt removed from the bracket on the catalytic converter to the bracket on the motor. We'll go ahead and start to work our cat off of the head here. Move our bracket off of the engine. Go ahead and grab the gasket, slide that off and set that aside. Now what I'm going to do is use a sanding block with some fine sandpaper here. And what I'm going to do is I'm just gently going to clean the port area to get any sort of carbon buildup or anything like that off of the aluminum here. Now that's why we're using a sanding block and some fine sandpaper. We don't want to score or damage the aluminum here. But we just want to make sure that it's clean and even. All of our ports are nice and clean. Go ahead and line up your gasket. Slide that over the studs. Make sure you put your gasket in place down below here. Once that's in, we can go ahead and lower down our catalytic converter. Line up those studs. Okay, work that back into position. Once we have that there, I'm going to go ahead and just get a couple of these nuts started. Now I'm going to go ahead and take our lower bracket here. I'm going to line this up. Go ahead and take lower bolt here. I'm going to line this up, get that through the bracket and into the cat. I'm going to go ahead and install the nut on the stud holding the bracket to the engine block. We'll just thread that on a few threads. Now in the exhaust section right here, there's a bracket that supports this. We went ahead and we're loosening up the nuts on each side here so we get a little bit of flexibility from the downpipe here. We're going to use a pry bar to go up here, and we're just going to maneuver this pipe a little bit so we can go ahead and get our studs to line up in there. So once we get the bolt in there, we're just going to go ahead and thread it in. It is a tight fit here. Once that bolt comes through the other side, we'll go ahead and put that nut on it. We'll get that nut threaded on the other side. And before we tighten this down, I'm going to go ahead and get the bolt started on the other side, and then we'll get that nut installed. And get that nut and bolt started there. Let's go ahead and install our 3 lower nuts on the 3 studs on the bottom of the manifold. With all 6 of these nuts installed, let's go ahead and snug down the manifold to the engine. I'm going to snug down the bolt for the bracket that attaches the bracket to the catalytic converter. Now we're going to snug down the nut on the stud holding the bracket to the engine. I'm going to go ahead and torque down the nuts here for the exhaust manifold to the engine. We're going to torque them down to 15 foot-pounds. Now there's a pattern. I'm going to do the center top, center bottom, bottom right, upper left, lower left, upper right. So let's go ahead and torque these down. I'm going to torque down the nut for the bracket going to the engine, 25 foot-pounds, as well as the bolt on the bottom from the bracket to the cat is also 25 foot-pounds. Go ahead and grab your heat shield, line this up, and we're going to get all 3 of our bolts started. Go ahead and snug these down. Go ahead and torque down these bolts to 40 foot-pounds. Now for our cross hanger here, we're going to go ahead and tighten these bolts down, or these nuts. And repeat for the other side. I'm going to go ahead and install our O2 sensor. And we did go ahead and put a little bit of anti-seize compound on the threads. Go ahead and get this started by hand. So just going to thread this in. Go ahead and snug that down. Go ahead and run our wire over. I'm going to run this through our plastic clip and reconnect it. Okay, run that connector over. Good, line that up, push it in, and feel it clip into place. And just secure our little strap here. Go ahead and drop our plastic shield down inside here. All right, once that's all snapped into place, we'll go ahead and bring our radiator back. We'll go ahead and drop our fan in. I'm going to go ahead and lower our fan down into place. Working that carefully around all of our other components here. As we lower the fan down into position and it drops down into place, we do want to pay attention to the position of our lower radiator hose. That needs to go into the plastic clip on the side of the fan. The bottom of the cooling fans drop onto the post at the bottom and lock into place. Once that's in, we'll go ahead and squeeze our fan onto our lock tabs here. Once that's locked into place, let's go ahead and install our wiring harness here. Bring our radiator hose down and over, get that lined up, work that onto the top of the radiator. Let's go ahead and install our expansion tank here. I'm going to remove our bolts that we had just placed back in here for storage. I'm going to put this pin or plastic post right on the top of the fans here. And go ahead and install your bolts. Just going to snug those by hand for now. Go ahead and install your expansion tank hose there. Let's go ahead and just snug down gently the expansion tank bolts. Once it's bottom out, you're pretty much good. I'm going to lower our radiator support down into place. Go ahead and start to install some of your bolts here. Snug this down into place. Once that bolt bottoms out, just a little bit more. I'll loosen that one there and push this bracket down. Once that bolt bottoms out, just a little bit more. Let's continue through the rest. To line up our hood latch here. I'll get these bolts started. All right, once we get all three of those started, let's go ahead and snug those down. Install our horns. Now once that's tight, I'm going to go ahead and repeat for the other side. Go ahead and snake our air intake tube down. The best way for you to get the air intake tube attached to the bottom of the airbox is to reach your hand down inside underneath the airbox. You can actually feel the plastic tube and the port on the bottom of the box feed the tube into it. You'll know it goes in because then this will snap right in like so. I want to install our intake here. Slide that onto the airbox. The bottom should line up with the bottom of that air intake tube. We're going to install our vacuum hose here. And on the right side, we have two clips for vacuum hoses here and here. Pop those in. Let's get our hardware installed right here. Go ahead and snug down these bolts. Now this is just plastic, you don't have to make it super tight. Once that bolt bottoms out, just a little bit more. Bolt is bottomed out. That's good. Good, and use your pliers. Work your hose clamp back up into place for the upper radiator here. I'm going to put on our cover right here. Once we have a radiator cover installed, let's go ahead and install our plastic push pins. I'm going to go ahead and install our connector. Just press this on. You'll hear it and feel it snap into place. And we'll just continue this across the whole top. Let's go ahead and install our splash guard here. In the center back here. Now these here you just want to snug down. They're literally just holding pieces of plastic together. Once you have all those secure, you're all set. Go ahead and open up your radiator cap. I want to go ahead and fill up our radiator. I'm going to use the recommended coolant for this vehicle. I'm going to pop open our expansion tank here as well. Then we'll go ahead and fill up the radiator until it's full. Once your radiator is full, you can go ahead and install your radiator cap. You want to come on over here to our expansion tank. I want to go ahead and fill this up to the full mark on the tank. Once this is done, you want to go ahead and put that cap on. You want to go ahead and start up the vehicle, get up to operating temperature. This could take anywhere from 20 to 30 minutes. Let that thermostat open up. You want to go ahead and check that fluid. Now the radiator itself and the engine will be taking coolant from the expansion tank. So once you operate the vehicle and the thermostat opens up, you'll probably watch the coolant drop down below low. Go ahead and top it off through here. Never open up the radiator cap after the vehicle has been operated and hot. So you always want to fill through this here. Take your ground terminal, line this up, and let's go ahead and snug down that nut.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.